The morning sun spilled gold across the cobblestone streets, but its light was nothing compared to the warmth that followed wherever Clementine walked. Her laughter, soft and lilting, danced through the market square like a familiar melody. Even the grumpiest of vendors found themselves smiling when she passed. "Lady Clem," the children chorused, their tiny feet pattering as they ran toward her. Clementine bent low, gathering them into her arms without hesitation, unbothered by the dust that clung to their worn clothes. Now," she said with mock sternness. "If you keep hugging me this tightly, I might vanish into your pockets." The children giggled as she handed out sweet buns wrapped in paper, her smile brighter than the morning itself. Despite being the daughter of Lord Rufus, the wealthiest merchant in the kingdom, Clementine never let privilege weigh upon her shoulders. She bartered with the vendors like any other townsfolk, listened to the woes of widows, and treated the poor with the same respect she gave nobles. To the people, she wasn't just Lady Clementine of House Rufus. She was their Lady Clem, the kind soul who saw them, not their status. But not everyone shared their love. From a gilded carriage nearby, two young women watched with curled lips and wrinkled noses. Effie and Lucy, Clementine's stepsisters, were near mirror images of each other, all painted beauty and poisoned hearts. "Look at her," Lucy scoffed, flipping her hair with practiced disdain. "Playing the saint again." Effie sneered. "As if anyone truly believes her sweetness isn't an act. Just wait. One day they'll see her for what she is." The coachman said nothing, though he hid a smile. Everyone in Evermere knew there was only one angel in the Rufus household, and it wasn't the twin vipers glaring through silk curtains. Back at the manor, whispers of Clementine's kindness filled the air before she even returned. Servants shared tales of her laughter with the market children, how even the poorest called her Grace. These words, floating like music through the marble halls, reached the ears of Lady Margaret. As she sat by the window, sipping her rose tea, her daughters stormed in, faces flushed with jealousy. "Mother," Effie whined, "the people adore her more than us. They call her the Lady of Grace as though we are ghosts." Lady Margaret's lips tightened, her eyes darkening like storm clouds. She said nothing at first, only stirred her tea slowly, watching the swirl of crimson against porcelain. When she finally spoke, her voice was smooth but cold. "Adoration is fickle, my darlings. Let them sing her name while they can." Then, with a glance toward the window where the village rooftops gleamed beneath the sun, Lady Margaret's hand stilled, and a faint flicker of envy burned behind her poised smile. "Even the brightest lights," she murmured, "can be dimmed." Once upon a time, the Rufus manor had echoed with laughter, a warm, golden sound that carried through the corridors like sunlight through lace. Clementine could still remember those days, faint as a dream, her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair, her father's booming laugh as he lifted her high into the air. Every night her mother would tuck her in with a lullaby and whisper, "You are my moonlight, Clem. No shadow can ever dim you." But one morning, the moonlight faded. Clementine was only 5 when her mother fell ill. The air in the manor turned heavy with whispers. Wolfsbane, they said, though no one knew how it had found its way into her tea. The physician tried everything, but by nightfall Lady Helena's light was gone. Little Clementine had cried until her voice broke, calling for her mother long after the servants carried her away. Lord Rufus, shattered and lost, began traveling more often, his grief buried beneath ledgers and sea routes. When he returned months later, he brought with him a new wife, Lady Margaret. She was beautiful, poised, and seemed to carry gentleness in her eyes. She knelt before Clementine and took her small hand, saying softly, "You've nothing to fear, my dear. I shall love you as my own." And for a time, she did. Lady Margaret read to her by the fire, braided her hair like her mother once had, and walked with her through the gardens. The servants whispered that perhaps the manor would know peace again. But all of that changed when the twins were born. Effie and Lucy, 2 tiny bundles of noise, became the center of Lady Margaret's world. Her smiles, once for Clementine, now belonged to her daughters. Slowly, her affection cooled into polite indifference. The stories stopped. The warmth faded, and the love she had promised turned to shadow. At first, Clementine thought it was her fault. She tried harder, helping the maids, bringing her stepmother tea, caring for her baby sisters. But her efforts were met with thin smiles and empty praises. As the years passed, subtle cruelties replaced affection. Clementine's meals were served last, her gowns handed down from the twins, her opinions dismissed like childish ramblings. Yet she bore it all with quiet grace, never once speaking ill of her stepmother. Effie and Lucy grew in beauty but not in spirit. Their laughter was shrill, their pride boundless. They mocked servants, bullied other girls, and spent their days preening before mirrors. Meanwhile, Clementine, though clothed in simplicity, blossomed into something far rarer, graceful, kind, and unshaken by envy. When Lord Rufus was home, harmony briefly returned. His love for Clementine was steadfast, but his long absences gave Lady Margaret freedom to weave her quiet disdain. The twins learned quickly from her example, and soon their words carried the same poison as their mother's smiles. Clementine grew into a woman of striking beauty, one that came not from jewels or paints but from a pure, unguarded heart. Suitors began to flood the manor gates, dukes, heirs, even the sons of nobles. They brought gifts of gold, silk, and promises of luxury. Yet Clementine refused them all. "I do not wish to be bought," she told her father gently one evening. "If love is true, it will not need a dowry." Her words spread quickly, and while the people admired her conviction, her stepfamily seethed. Effie sneered, "Who refuses a duke? Perhaps she thinks herself better than us." Lucy laughed. "Let her wait for love then, she'll die an old maid." Lady Margaret said nothing, but her gaze lingered on Clementine with a quiet fury. There was something in the girl she could not crush, something too bright, too strong. And though she smiled in public, deep within, jealousy festered like rot. For every time Clementine's kindness was praised, Lady Margaret's envy grew sharper. And in the grand halls of the Rufus manor, where love once lived, shadows now whispered in every corner, waiting for the day they would finally swallow the light. The morning the royal herald rode into the streets, the air itself seemed to tremble with excitement. His silver trumpet blared through the marketplace, silencing chatter and clattering stalls alike. Townsfolk gathered as his voice rang clear and commanding. "By decree of His Majesty Alpha King Valerian, a grand ball shall be held at the royal palace 1 fortnight from today. On that night His Majesty will unmask himself before all and choose his destined mate, the future queen of the kingdom." For 34 years King Valerian had hidden his face behind a golden wolf mask, a tradition that shields him from recognition until he chose his bride, a test to see which woman could love him for his heart, not his looks. The mystery had only deepened his allure. In taverns, women fanned themselves, dreaming aloud of being the one to melt the king's guarded heart. Seamstresses gossiped over bolts of silk, imagining gowns fit for royalty. Even the market children sang silly songs about who might be queen. The kingdom buzzed like a hive, every maiden suddenly believing destiny could be hers. Back at the Rufus manor, excitement turned to frenzy. Effie and Lucy nearly knocked over a maid as they burst through the doors, shrieking with delight. "Did you hear, Mother?" Effie gasped, eyes wide. "The king will choose his queen at the ball." Lucy twirled across the room, her silken skirts spinning. "And it shall be me. I'll wear gold. His favorite color, they say. He won't look at another." Effie scowled. "You? Please. Everyone knows he'll prefer someone with poise, not a child playing queen." "Poise?" Lucy snapped, placing her hands on her hips. "You can't even curtsy without wobbling." "Enough." Lady Margaret's sharp tone sliced through their bickering. She rose gracefully from her chair, eyes gleaming with ambition. "You are both my daughters. You will attend, and one of you will become queen. Do you understand?" Effie and Lucy nodded eagerly. their quarrel forgotten in the promise of power. But as Lady Margaret spoke, her gaze drifted to the far corner where Clementine sat quietly, mending a torn shawl. Her fingers paused mid-stitch when she noticed the way her stepmother's eyes lingered. Cool, assessing, dangerous. Clementine smiled faintly. "I suppose you'll all be busy preparing for the ball," she said softly. Effie snorted. "Of course. It's not every day the king seeks a queen." Lucy smirked. "Oh, but you wouldn't understand, sister. You've no interest in love or beauty." "I have interest in both," Clementine replied, her voice calm yet firm. "Just not the kind that needs a crown to make it real." Lady Margaret's lips twitched, though whether in mockery or restraint, none could tell. "So you'll not attend then?" she asked smoothly. Clementine shook her head. "What use have I for royal splendor, mother? I do not seek a throne. I only wish to love and be loved truly." Her words hung in the air like a gentle defiance, and for a fleeting moment silence filled the room. Then Effie laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Love won't feed you, dear sister, nor will it fill your wardrobe with silk, nor save you from loneliness," Lucy added cruelly. But Clementine simply smiled and returned to her sewing, her calmness unsettling them more than anger ever could. That night, as Lady Margaret stood by her window, watching the moon bathe the gardens in silver light, her reflection glimmered faintly against the glass. "If she attends," she whispered to herself, "the king will see her before he sees my daughters." Her jaw tightened. She must not outshine them again. And so, beneath the quiet glow of moonlight, envy began to take root in Lady Margaret's heart, a dark seed watered by fear. For even without trying, Clementine's light threatened to eclipse them all. The Rufus manor had always been alive with whispers, servants murmuring in corners, laughter echoing faintly through the halls. But lately, those whispers carried something new. Clementine's name. It began one late morning in the laundry courtyard, where two maids hung freshly washed linens under the sun. The air was filled with the scent of soap and jasmine when one of them sighed dreamily. "Have you seen Lady Clementine lately?" she whispered, glancing around to be sure no one was near. Even in her plain gowns, she glows brighter than the noble girls who wear gold. The other maid nodded eagerly. "Aye. If the king truly seeks a queen of grace and heart, then surely Lady Clementine will be the one. The people adore her." Neither of them noticed Effie standing at the garden archway, a parasol dangling forgotten in her hand. Her face twisted in disbelief, then fury. Clementine? Her half-sister, the dull dove who spent her days smiling at peasants? Effie's pulse quickened as she turned on her heel, storming back into the manor, skirts rustling angrily against the tiled floor. She burst into the sitting room where Lucy lounged, filing her nails and admiring her reflection in a silver hand mirror. "You won't believe what I just heard," Effie hissed. Lucy looked up lazily. "What is it now? Did another merchant's son send you flowers instead of me?" "No, fool," Effie snapped. "The maids are saying the king will choose Clementine as his queen." Lucy froze mid-motion. "Clementine?" she repeated slowly, as though tasting poison. "Surely you jest." "I wish I did." Effie threw herself onto the couch, fuming. "They say she has a heart of gold and that her humility will charm the king. Imagine that. Our saint sister crowned while we kneel to her." Lucy's nostrils flared. "Over my dead body." The two sisters sat in seething silence for a long moment, the only sound the ticking of the clock and the rustle of silk. Then Lucy's lips curled into a malicious smile. "Mother must hear this." Lady Margaret was in her chamber when they arrived, surrounded by ribbons, perfumes, and fabric samples for the ball. She was choosing jewels for Effie and Lucy when the girls burst in, breathless with outrage. "Mother," Effie cried, "the servants are saying dreadful things about Clementine." Lady Margaret arched a brow, her tone deceptively calm. "What things?" Lucy stepped forward, her voice dripping with disgust. They say the king will choose her, that she'll be the one to wear the crown. For a moment Lady Margaret's hand froze over a strand of pearls. Then slowly she set it down. They said that? Yes, Effie insisted, clutching her skirt. The maids spoke of her as if she were some divine creature. It's unbearable. Even the merchants whisper her name as though she's royalty already. A dangerous silence filled the room. Lady Margaret rose from her seat, gliding to the window where sunlight filtered through lace curtains. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman of beauty and control. But in her chest, something dark stirred. Of course they love her, she said softly, though her eyes glimmered with venom. She's had everything handed to her: adoration, pity, affection. Even when she does nothing, she shines. Effie and Lucy exchanged nervous glances. What shall we do, Mother? Lucy asked cautiously. We cannot let her outshine us again. The king must not even see her. Lady Margaret turned slowly, her expression unreadable. No, she said at last, her tone low and deliberate. He must not. That night, while the rest of the manor slept, Lady Margaret sat alone by candlelight in her private chamber. The flame flickered against her face, casting shadows that seemed to whisper to her. Her mind churned with jealousy and calculation. She thought of Clementine's golden hair, how it shimmered under the sun, how it framed her face with effortless grace. If her beauty wins hearts, Lady Margaret mused, then beauty shall be the first to fall. She reached for an old chest at the back of her vanity, one she had not opened in years. Inside were bottles and vials, strange remnants from her mother's days as a potion mistress. Among them was a small jar labeled Lunaris larvae, moon maggots, tiny, nearly invisible creatures bred by witches and apothecaries to cure lycanthropic fur infections or destroy them entirely. They devoured werewolf hair with unmatched hunger. Lady Margaret smiled coldly. Hair is the crown of a woman, she murmured. Let's see how she fares without hers. The next morning she called her daughters into her chamber. The twins entered eagerly, curiosity lighting their faces. Mother, what are we doing here? Effie asked. Lady Margaret held up the small jar, the faint shimmer of life writhing within. We are ensuring your future, my darlings. Clementine will not attend that ball looking like a queen. Lucy's eyes widened. What is it? A little help from nature, Lady Margaret said sweetly. These creatures thrive on hair. Mix them into her hair cream and in days she will scratch herself bald. The sisters gasped, their shock quickly melting into giddy delight. Oh, Mother, Effie giggled. This is brilliant. Lucy clapped her hands, unable to contain her laughter. She'll look hideous. No one will even recognize her. Precisely, Lady Margaret said, sealing the jar with care. But remember not a word. You will act concerned, sympathetic even. Let her believe it's misfortune, not malice, that took her beauty. That afternoon, when Clementine left her chamber to visit the market, Effie and Lucy sneaked into her room. Sunlight streamed softly through her window, illuminating a small vanity lined with simple jars and combs. There it is, Effie whispered, pointing to the jar of lavender cream Clementine used for her hair. She unscrewed the lid, and Lucy, grinning mischievously, poured the contents of the maggot jar into it. The faint shimmer disappeared beneath the pale cream, leaving no trace of what lurked within. Effie stirred it with a hairpin, whispering, Farewell, dear sister. May your beauty rest in peace. Lucy snorted with laughter. Imagine her horror when her hair begins to fall. She'll never show her face at the ball. They replaced the lid, tidied the table, and hurried out of the room, giggling like children who had stolen sweets. That night, Clementine brushed her hair by candlelight, humming softly to herself. She dipped her fingers into the jar of cream and worked it through her long, silky strands, unaware of the slow poison woven into its texture. The maggots stirred, unseen. Outside, the moon rose full and pale, its light spilling over the manor like a silent witness. In her chamber, Lady Margaret stood by the window, watching the silver glow touch the rooftops. Her daughters had gone to bed still laughing at their secret. But she remained still, her heart heavy with something she refused to name. For beneath her triumph, a whisper lingered, an echo of guilt. She turned away before the thought could take root, whispering instead, "It's for my daughters. They deserve the best." And as the night deepened, the seeds of envy she had sown began to take life. Quiet, crawling, and merciless. It began with a gentle itch, innocent enough to ignore. Clementine brushed at her scalp, thinking it was merely the dust from the courtyard or the summer's heat. But as the days passed, that mild irritation grew into something unbearable. Her nights were restless, her fingers constantly scratching, her scalp tender to the touch. She tried everything she could think of, lavender oils, cold rinses, even sleeping with her hair wrapped, but nothing helped. When Lady Margaret first noticed her discomfort, she played her role perfectly. She approached Clementine during breakfast, her face painted with concern. "My dear, what troubles you? You've been scratching your head like a restless child. Has something bitten you?" Clementine sighed, embarrassed. "It's nothing serious, stepmother. Just an itch that won't leave me." Lady Margaret tilted her head with mock sympathy. "Oh, my poor girl, your delicate skin must be reacting to something. Perhaps your hair cream?" She reached across the table, patting Clementine's hand gently. "Don't worry, I'll make you something soothing tonight. An old family remedy. It will take away all discomfort." True to her word, she appeared that night with a small jar. The cream shimmered faintly under the candlelight, its scent sweet. "Use this, my dear. Massage it deep into your scalp. By morning, you will feel better." Clementine smiled weakly, too kind-hearted to question her stepmother's generosity. "Thank you, stepmother." Behind the door, Effie and Lucy could barely contain their laughter. "Look at her," Effie whispered, covering her mouth. "She doesn't even suspect a thing." Lucy smirked. "By next week, she'll be bald as a melon. No king will want a bride with a head like a field." Their mother silenced them with a satisfied smile. "Patience, my darlings. True ruin takes time." The next morning, Clementine felt worse. Her scalp burned and itched until tears welled in her eyes. She combed her hair and gasped as strands came away easily, clinging to the comb's teeth. Her once silky hair, golden like the early morning sun, now felt rough, lifeless, and thin. She hid the fallen strands in her drawer, too ashamed to show anyone. Still, she refused to stay hidden. That afternoon, she tied her hair with a simple scarf and went to the market as usual. The townsfolk smiled as she passed, though she noticed the curious glances. Children ran to her, clinging to her skirt, and she smiled through the pain. But her steps were slower that day, her head pounding from the constant irritation. Near the herb stalls, Marie, the village herbalist, noticed her discomfort. The woman had known Clementine since she was a child. "My dear, what's wrong?" Marie asked, frowning. "You look troubled." Clementine smiled faintly, though her hand moved again to scratch her scalp. "It's nothing, my lady. Just some irritation in my hair. I suppose it will pass." Marie's eyes narrowed. "Come closer, child." She motioned her near and parted Clementine's scarf gently. The old woman's expression changed at once. "By the moon's grace, Clementine, these are not mere itches. You've been infected with moon maggots." Clementine froze, eyes wide. "Moon maggots? That's impossible. How could—" Marie took a deep breath, her wrinkled hands steady. "These vile insects burrow into the scalp and feed on hair roots. Someone must have introduced them through something you use. Tell me, have you changed your hair balm recently?" Clementine blinked, confused. "No, just my hair cream." Marie's lips pressed into a thin line. "Bring it to me, child. Quietly. There's evil work in this." Clementine's heart pounded. "You think someone infected my cream on purpose?" "I think," Marie whispered, glancing around cautiously, "someone envies your light. But don't speak yet. Let me see the truth first." Clementine nodded slowly. That evening, she instructed her maid, Laura, to deliver the jar of cream to Marie in secret. Clementine tried to stay hopeful, but her reflection was unbearable. Her hair had thinned so much that her scalp showed beneath it. Tears blurred her vision as she touched the brittle ends that once flowed like silk. She could barely recognize herself anymore. Lady Margaret knocked lightly and entered, feigning surprise. "Oh, my dear child," she sighed dramatically. "Your condition has worsened. We must act quickly before it spreads." "What do you mean?" Clementine asked weakly. Margaret held up a pair of silver scissors. "We must cut it all off. It's the only way to heal your scalp. If you don't, you could lose everything. Your beauty, your health, perhaps even your life." Clementine hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. Her hair had been her pride, golden like her late mother's, the one thing she felt truly connected her to her memory. "Must we really?" she whispered. Margaret placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's for your own good, my dear." And so, Clementine sat quietly as her stepmother stood behind her, blade in hand. The first snip echoed in the silent chamber. One by one, golden strands fell to the floor, forming small piles that glistened under the lamplight. Clementine's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Each lock that fell seemed to take with it a piece of her confidence, her joy, her grace. When it was over, Lady Margaret smiled triumphantly. "There now, you'll heal in no time." Effie and Lucy appeared at the door, their faces hidden behind mock concern. "Oh, poor Clementine," Effie murmured. "You look so different." Lucy smirked. "Perhaps the king will prefer a modest maiden with no hair. How unique." Clementine's eyes burned with humiliation, but she forced a faint smile. When she left the room, the three women burst into laughter. Effie clapped her hands, barely able to breathe from amusement. "She looks ridiculous." Lucy nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. "No more glowing jewel, just a plain stone." Lady Margaret leaned back, her smile cold and satisfied. "Let this be a lesson to her. No one outshines my daughters." The days that followed were dark and heavy for Clementine. She locked herself away from the world, unable to bear the reflection that stared back at her from the mirror. Her once golden hair, her mother's legacy, was gone, leaving her scalp bare and tender. Every morning she woke with the same ache in her chest, a hollow reminder of what she had lost. The maids tiptoed past her door, whispering among themselves. Some pitied her deeply, others exchanged fearful glances. Everyone in the manor sensed that something was wrong, but no one dared to speak. Lady Margaret ruled with an iron smile, gentle in appearance, venomous in truth. Those who had served long enough knew that questioning her word was a dangerous game. At night, Clementine cried silently into her pillow, her tears soaking the sheets. She thought of her late mother, of the laughter they once shared in the garden. Her mother's soft voice seemed to whisper in her memory, "Grace, my dear, is not worn, it's lived." But the words, though comforting, could not erase the shame that had taken root in her heart. Weeks passed before Lord Rufus returned from his long trading voyage. The moment he stepped into the manor and saw his daughter, his heart sank. "Clementine," he whispered, almost in disbelief. Her head was wrapped in a delicate scarf, but even that could not hide the truth. "What happened to you, my jewel?" Before Clementine could answer, Lady Margaret hurried forward, feigning distress. "Oh, my lord, it's been dreadful. Poor Clementine fell ill. Her scalp infested from all that time she spends mingling with those filthy market folk and beggar children. I did my best to save her, truly I did, but nothing helped until we had to cut it all off." Lord Rufus turned to Clementine, his eyes full of sorrow. "Is this true, my dear?" Clementine hesitated. She didn't want to burden him or cause conflict. "Perhaps it is, father. I do spend much time with the children at the market. Maybe I was careless." Lady Margaret sighed dramatically. "She's too kind for her own good. I warned her the poor are not always clean, but she never listens." Rufus studied his daughter for a long moment. There was something in her eyes. Pain, Yes, but also innocence. He reached forward and took her hand. "My sweet girl," he said softly, "your beauty has never been in your hair. It lies within you, in your kindness, in your light. No misfortune can take that away." Clementine's lips trembled. "But Father, everyone looks at me differently now. I feel less." Rufus smiled gently. "Only those who see with shallow eyes would think so. The rest will still see the jewel you are." That night, Clementine lay awake, her father's words echoing in her mind. "Beauty lies within." The phrase repeated again and again until something shifted inside her. She realized that no amount of cruelty could truly break her if she refused to let it. The next morning, she rose before dawn, wrapped her scarf tightly, and walked out into the cool air. Her steps took her to the market, the one place that had always brought her peace. People turned as she approached, murmuring quietly. Some gasped in pity. Others simply stared, unsure what to say. But then, as she reached the fruit stall, a small voice called out, "Lady Clem!" A little girl ran up to her, grinning wide. "You still look beautiful." Clementine froze for a heartbeat before laughing softly, tears stinging her eyes. "Do you really think so, my dear?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Of course. Mother says kind hearts are the prettiest, and you still smile like sunshine." Others soon gathered around, children with sticky hands, merchants with friendly eyes. Their warmth melted away her fear. For the first time since her loss, she smiled openly, no longer hiding behind her scarf. The night of the royal ball arrived with splendor that seemed to shake the heavens themselves. The grand palace of Alpha King Valeria glittered like 1,000 stars had descended to earth. Lanterns shaped like golden wolves hung from every archway, casting warm light upon walls carved with ancient markings of the Alpha line. Musicians played soft, enchanting tunes as noblemen and women from every corner of the kingdom arrived in carriages trimmed with silver and gold. The courtyard was alive with motion, horses neighing, guards saluting, footmen opening doors. Laughter floated through the air like bubbles in wine. Every lady shimmered in jewels, every man glowed with pride. But beneath all the finery, hearts thudded with the same hope, to catch the king's eye. Back at the Rufus manor, chaos reigned. Effie and Lucy shrieked and scurried about, each trying to outshine the other. "Fetch my emerald comb," Lucy demanded. "No, the gold one. Emeralds will clash with my gown." Effie rolled her eyes. "You'll need more than a comb to catch the king's attention, dear sister." Their mother, Lady Margaret, stood in the center of the room, watching them like a queen surveying her soldiers. "Enough squabbling," she ordered sharply. "Tonight is not a night for mistakes. When you walk into that palace, remember, you are not there to admire, you are there to be chosen." Effie smiled proudly. "We won't fail you, Mother." But her confidence faltered when Clementine entered the room. She wore a soft, elegant blue gown, simple, flowing, with a simple silver pendant on her neck. Around her head was a silk wrap of ivory white, delicate and clean, covering her bare scalp with quiet dignity. Though her attire was modest, there was something unspoken in her poise, something that neither Effie nor Lucy could imitate. Lady Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And where do you think you're going, Clementine?" Clementine looked up calmly. "To the ball, Mother, like every other maiden in the kingdom." Lady Margaret scoffed. "You will not. I forbid it. You've caused this family enough embarrassment with your unfortunate condition. You'll stay here where you belong." Clementine's heart clenched, but before she could respond, a deep voice interrupted. "She will attend." Lord Rufus had entered the room unnoticed. His presence carried weight, the kind that silenced every tongue. "She is my daughter as much as any of yours," he said firmly. "And she will not be hidden away because of her misfortune." Lady Margaret forced a smile, her eyes glinting. "Of course, my lord, if that is your wish." Clementine bowed her head in gratitude, though she could see the fury flicker behind her stepmother's false sweetness. By nightfall, the family carriage rattled toward the palace. Effie and Lucy giggled with excitement, their perfume thick and sweet. Clementine sat quietly by the window, watching the glowing spires of the castle grow closer. Her hands trembled slightly. Despite her resolve, fear crept in. She knew the eyes that would judge her, the whispers that would follow. When they arrived, the grand hall was already bursting with light and laughter. Crystal chandeliers hung above like frozen constellations, and golden curtains swept down from the ceiling in elegant waves. Nobles mingled in clusters, their laughter sharp as glass. Effie and Lucy descended first, glittering in gowns of ruby and gold. Heads turned, voices murmured approval. Lady Margaret followed with an air of superiority, her smile polished and hollow. Then came Clementine. As she stepped into the hall, silence rippled outward like a slow-moving tide. Her gown was not bejeweled, nor was her hair piled high like the other ladies. The silk scarf around her head gleamed softly under the light, catching the glow of the chandeliers. Some whispered admiration, quiet, sincere. "She's still lovely," one nobleman murmured. "Even without her hair, there's grace in her bearing." But others were not so kind. "Pity," another voice hissed. "Such beauty wasted. The poor girl looks sickly." "Do you think she lost favor with her father?" "Perhaps the king will pity her enough to give her a dance," someone sneered. Clementine kept her head high, her eyes straight ahead. She moved through the crowd with quiet dignity, even as the words stabbed deep into her heart. At one corner she caught sight of men who had once courted her, young lords who had once sung praises of her beauty. When their eyes met hers now, they looked away, pretending not to see her. Their laughter, once flattering, now carried mockery. She felt something inside her crumble. "So this is what it means to be seen only for your face," she thought bitterly. "They never loved me at all." She made her way to the far edge of the ballroom, away from the laughter and the glitter. There, in the soft glow of the chandeliers, she stood quietly, her heart heavy, yet calm. Lady Margaret's voice drifted through the noise. "Keep your distance from her," she whispered sharply to her daughters. "Tonight no one must remember her name." Effie and Lucy nodded eagerly, turning back toward the crowd of admiring noblemen. Their laughter rang loud and hollow, as if to drown out Clementine's silent presence. Music drifted through the air, soft, regal, and laced with a melancholy that seemed to mock Clementine's quiet heart. Everywhere she looked, nobles laughed, danced, and flaunted their riches. Yet, amid the splendor, she felt utterly alone. Her silk head wrap gleamed softly under the lights, but her uncovered pain was something no fabric could hide. She stood near one of the tall windows, pretending to admire the moon, while secretly wishing she could disappear into its glow. She tried to smile, to blend in with the elegance of the night, but her reflection in the glass told another story. A lady once adored, now pitied. As she blinked back tears, a voice spoke behind her, calm, yet curious. "Are those tears of joy, my lady? To be in the Alpha King's court must be quite the honor." Clementine turned sharply, half embarrassed, half irritated. Before her stood a man in a plain brown coat, without jewels or any sign of noble birth. His boots were plain, his hair tousled, and his smile strangely comforting. He held out a neatly folded handkerchief. She let out a small laugh through her tears. "You think too highly of your king," she said, taking the handkerchief. "To think that merely standing in his court would make me cry." The man chuckled, bowing his head slightly. "Forgive me, then. I'm not one for courts or ceremonies. My name is Urban." "Clementine," she replied, shaking his hand gently. His grip was warm, steady, unlike the trembling that had become part of her lately. "Clementine," he repeated, as though testing the sound. "A name of light." She smiled faintly. "Light dims when it's surrounded by shadows." Urban tilted his head. But even shadows need light to exist. For the first time that night, Clementine laughed, a genuine sound that startled even herself. "You speak like a philosopher. Are you sure you belong here?" "I could ask you the same," he said with a teasing grin. Their conversation flowed like they had known each other for years. He asked her what she thought of the ball, of the grand choosing ceremony meant to find the Alpha King a bride. She hesitated, then said, "It's a waste of time. The women here aren't after love. They're after the crown. I pity the king. He will never know true affection. He's bound by duty, not desire." Urban's gaze softened. "And what if love found him anyway?" She shrugged. "Then I'd hope he's wise enough to recognize it before it's too late." Urban smiled, his eyes reflecting something deeper than amusement. "You're unlike anyone I've met tonight, Clementine." "Because I don't wear gold on my sleeves?" She teased lightly. "Because you speak from your soul," he replied simply. "Tell me, Clementine," he continued, "what would you do if the king himself chose you tonight?" She met his gaze firmly. "I'd turn him down. I don't want a crown. I want something real." His eyes held hers for a long, searching moment. Then, with a small, knowing smile, he said, "I hope you find it." Before she could respond, Urban gave a brief nod and stepped away, vanishing into the crowd as though swallowed by the music and laughter. Clementine stood still, her hand still warm from his touch, her heart beating faster than it had in months. There was something about him, his gentleness, his words, his quiet confidence that left her longing. She searched the room for him, but he was gone. Just then she felt a tug on her sleeve. Marie, the kind herbalist, stood behind her, eyes wide with worry. "My child," she whispered urgently, "you must listen to me." Clementine frowned. "My lady, what's wrong?" "It's about your cream I took to examine." Clementine's stomach tightened. "What about it?" Marie glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "It was poisoned, with moon maggots. And the remedy she sent you, it was infected too. That's why your hair fell, my child. It wasn't illness. It was a plot." Clementine froze, the world spinning. No, that can't be true." Marie shook her head sadly. "That is the truth, my child." A sharp pain cut through Clementine's chest. Betrayal clawed at her throat, stealing her breath. Her knees nearly buckled as the truth sank in. The people she trusted most, the ones she still tried to please, had been the architects of her humiliation. "Thank you, my lady," she whispered, voice trembling. "You've done more for me than you know." As she stood there, surrounded by laughter and glittering lights, Clementine made a silent vow. The days of quiet suffering were over. She would no longer bow to cruelty or hide in shame. Effie and Lucy glided among the nobles like peacocks, their gowns shimmering in shades of gold and rose. The noblemen trailed after them, bowing, flattering, and competing for their favor. Every laugh from the sisters was loud and deliberate, every gesture designed to capture attention. They were radiant in the shallow way the world adored, beautiful, loud, and heartless. To them, this night was victory. The nobles' praise washed over them like wine, sweet and intoxicating. Lady Margaret watched from across the hall, her lips curved in satisfaction. Her daughters would soon rise. One of them could be queen. The thought made her chest swell with pride, though something about Clementine's calm presence in the corner irritated her deeply. Effie and Lucy's eyes soon found Clementine standing alone by a marble pillar, her silk head wrap gleaming softly beneath the light. She looked out of place, too simple, too calm. Even so, there was something about her stillness that drew quiet glances from a few kind souls. It annoyed the sisters. They couldn't bear that even after all they had done. Clementine still had a quiet dignity they couldn't match. "Look at her," Effie whispered with a smirk, tugging at her sister's arm. "Still pretending she belongs here." Lucy chuckled darkly. "Let's remind her of her place." Together they crossed the ballroom floor, their jewels clinking, their perfume heavy in the air. As they approached, Clementine turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Effie's smile was sweet, but sharp. "Well, sister, we saw you chatting with that man earlier. Tell me, do you fancy commoners now?" Lucy joined in, tilting her head mockingly. "I suppose it's only natural. You've always spent your time with peasants and beggars. Maybe next time you'll bring one home for dinner." They both burst into cruel laughter, loud enough for a few guests nearby to glance over and whisper. Clementine's lips trembled, not from shame this time, but from anger held too long. Her eyes, once gentle, burned with quiet fury. "I know what you did," she said coldly. The laughter died on their lips. Effie blinked. What? What are you talking about?" "The cream," Clementine said, her voice low but sharp as glass. "You infested it with moon maggots. You and your mother. You wanted to ruin me." The color drained from Effie's face. Lucy's hand froze midair, clutching her fan. For a long, tense moment, none of them spoke. The orchestra's melody carried faintly between them, mocking the silence. Then Effie quickly recovered, forcing a shaky laugh. "You can't prove anything," she said, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. Clementine took a slow step closer, her eyes never leaving theirs. "I don't need proof," she said softly. "The truth has a way of showing itself, and when it does, not even your mother's lies will save you." Effie's throat bobbed. "You wouldn't dare." Clementine's lips curved into a cold, fearless smile. "I won't play the docile sister anymore." For the first time in their lives, the sisters saw something in Clementine that frightened them. Not her beauty, not her grace, but her resolve. The same woman they had mocked and trampled now stood before them, unbroken, her quiet rage radiating stronger than any crown they hoped to wear. Lucy tugged at Effie's sleeve. "Let's go," she muttered, her voice shaking slightly. Effie hesitated, glaring at Clementine one last time, but there was panic in her eyes now, panic she couldn't hide. Together the two hurried away, their laughter forced and brittle. From across the ballroom, Lady Margaret watched the exchange. Though she couldn't hear the words, she felt the shift, the invisible crack forming in the power she held over her stepdaughter. Her heart skipped. For the first time that night, a chill ran down her spine. Clementine turned away, her gaze steady, her pulse still racing. Around her, the music continued. The nobles danced and the sisters tried to reclaim their charm. But the balance had changed. Something inside Clementine had awakened. A strength born not from vanity or vengeance, but from self-respect. And as Lady Margaret looked on, unease creeping into her proud heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that Clementine's quiet defiance was only the beginning of something far greater than she could control. The blare of trumpets shook the grand hall, silencing laughter, chatter, and even the sound of music. Every noble head turned toward the great staircase draped in gold and crimson silk. There, descending with measured steps, was Alpha King Valerian, his presence so commanding that even the chandeliers seemed to dim in reverence. He wore a golden mask that caught the light with every movement, concealing his features but not his authority. His tall frame radiated quiet power, his every gesture deliberate and regal. The people bowed deeply, whispering under their breath, as if afraid that even admiration might offend him. Lady Margaret's lips curved into a smile that was all ambition. She pressed Effie's hand tightly. "This is your moment," she whispered. Effie nodded, her heart pounding, her eyes fixed on the king like a predator stalking prey. Lucy, equally eager, adjusted her gown and fluttered her lashes. The music rose again, gentle and melodic. The king stepped forward into the crowd, scanning the sea of faces. Then, with graceful command, he offered his hand, first to Effie. She curtsied dramatically, nearly tripping in her haste to please him. He danced with her politely, his expression unreadable beneath the mask. Effie giggled too much, speaking fast, showering him with flattery he did not return. When the dance ended, she bowed, her cheeks flushed with a mix of excitement and confusion at his lack of warmth. Next, Lucy approached, confidence glittering in her eyes. She curtsied lower than her sister and smiled with practiced charm. The king indulged her with another dance. Her voice was sugary, her movements elegant. He responded with the calm detachment of a man observing a performance rather than enjoying it. He moved from Lucy to Lady Aurora, and to more ladies who seemed not to have captured his attention. Lady Margaret's eyes darted between her daughters and the king, panic creeping beneath her painted calm. Why isn't he enchanted? Why isn't he smiling? Then his golden gaze lifted and found Clementine. The murmurs began at once. He's looking at her. Surely not. The bald one. No, the Lady Clementine. Even with her hair gone, she glows. Clementine froze under the weight of those whispers. Her heart hammered painfully. She had tried to remain invisible, to hide behind the silk wrap on her head and the quiet grace she still carried. But the king's eyes, sharp even behind the mask, saw her. With a movement both confident and kind, he approached and extended his hand. The crowd fell silent. "May I?" he asked softly. Clementine hesitated only a moment before nodding. His hand was warm, strong, steady. He led her to the center of the ballroom, where the floor gleamed like moonlight caught in marble. The music changed, slower, gentler, the kind that made hearts remember how to beat. As they began to dance, the world seemed to fall away. His movements were effortless, perfectly in tune with hers. Every turn, every step felt natural, as though they had known each other long before that night. Around them, whispers rippled again. Admiration this time, not mockery. Her grace matches his. She moves like a queen already. Perhaps the king has found his mate. Clementine felt her cheeks warm. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel pitied. She didn't feel less. She felt seen. The king leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Seems the people approve of us." The tone, soft yet teasing, pierced her like lightning. Her heart stuttered. That voice, she knew it. Her eyes widened, her breath catching. "Urban?" she whispered, her voice trembling. A faint smile curved beneath the golden mask. "You remember," he murmured. Her heart raced wildly, her mind swirled with disbelief. Urban, the simple man at the ball, the one who spoke to me kindly, who saw me when no one else did. He's the Alpha King? Memories flashed before her eyes. His gentle humor, his honesty, the way he had listened to her without judgment. She had felt sorry for him. She had told him the king would never know true love because of duty. And now, standing before her, the truth felt both beautiful and terrifying. He twirled her gracefully, their eyes locking even from his mask as he whispered, "You spoke boldly about the king and his curse of duty. Tell me, Lady Clementine, do you still believe he cannot know love?" Her lips parted, but words failed her. The music, the lights, the whispers, all faded. Only the thrum of her heartbeat remained. He smiled again, softer this time, a flicker of tenderness breaking through his regal composure. "I hope you're wrong," he said quietly. When the song ended, the room erupted into applause. The king bowed to her, never breaking eye contact. Clementine curtsied shakily, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her racing thoughts. Effie and Lucy stood frozen among the crowd, disbelief etched across their faces. Lady Margaret's smile had vanished entirely, her heart sinking as realization struck. The king had danced not with her daughters, but with the girl she had tried to destroy. And in that glittering hall, under the 1,000 eyes of the kingdom, Clementine stood radiant, not because of her hair, her dress, or her title, but because she had unknowingly captured the heart of the Alpha King himself. The air in the royal hall turned heavy, so thick with tension that even the chandeliers seemed to stop swaying. Every guest stood still, eyes fixed on the Alpha King as he stepped forward to the center of the grand marble floor. The golden mask gleamed one last time under the shimmering light before his hand rose and slowly pulled it away. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. The Alpha King's face, young, strong, and breathtakingly noble, was revealed at last. His eyes, those sharp molten gold orbs, swept across the stunned crowd. Many of the noblewomen clutched their chests. Others whispered in disbelief. So this was the man behind the mask, the one who held both beauty and power in equal measure. Clementine stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. It was him. Urban. The same warmth, the same eyes, only now shining with the weight of royalty. Her heart raced so fast she thought it might give her away. Valerian let the silence stretch a moment longer, commanding every heart in the room without uttering a single word. Then his deep, rich voice filled the hall, calm and steady, every syllable carrying the strength of truth. "Tonight, I sought not beauty, nor wealth, nor power," he began, his eyes moving from one stunned face to another. "I sought a woman who could see me, not as a king, but as a man. I walked among my people in plain garments, and most turned away. To them, a crown makes a man worth noticing. But there was one woman, one who saw past the cloth and the title." The crowd stirred, heads turned, whispers began to rise like waves. "She did not flatter me. She did not beg for attention or bow for gain. She spoke of love, of sincerity, of compassion for the people. She spoke to me as one heart to another. And in that moment, I knew." He paused, his gaze softening as it found Clementine in the crowd. "That I had found the heart worthy of the crown." A hush fell once again. Even the candles seemed to burn lower, as though the world itself was listening. "What is a queen without love and empathy?" he continued. "A crown without compassion is nothing but an ornament of pride. A queen must carry her people in her heart as she carries the jewels upon her head. Only one among you has shown me such a heart." Lady Margaret's hand gripped her fan so tightly it snapped. Effie and Lucy exchanged frightened glances. "Today," Valerian said, his voice rising, echoing through the golden hall, "I choose Clementine, not for her beauty, though her spirit makes her radiant beyond measure, but for the purity of her heart and her courage to be kind in a world that neglects the weak. I choose her as my Luna and Queen." The hall erupted, some gasping, some applauding, others frozen in disbelief. But then the applause grew louder, echoing through the vaulted ceilings, rising into a roar of approval. "Clementine," they chanted, "the Lady of Grace, the people's queen." Clementine's vision blurred with tears. Her heart raced wildly as the Alpha King stepped toward her. Every eye followed him. When he reached her, he extended his hand, the same hand that had once offered her a simple handkerchief. "Clementine," he said gently, "will you walk beside me?" She could barely breathe. With trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. He raised it to his lips, then turned to the royal priest who stepped forward, bearing the marking chalice, a sacred relic of their kind. Before the gathered eyes of nobles and peasants alike, the Alpha King bent his head toward her neck. A golden glow enveloped them as he whispered the ancient vow. "By the light of the moon and the spirit of the crown, I bind my soul to yours, my strength to your heart, my reign to your grace." He bit gently, marking her with the sacred mate bond, a shimmering crescent that glowed faintly on her skin. Clementine, trembling with emotion, returned the vow, marking him in turn. When the golden light faded, they stood bound, not just as king and queen, but as souls united by destiny. Tears rolled down Clementine's cheeks. Around her, the people fell to their knees in reverence. The royal crown was brought forth, crafted from gold and moonstone. Valerian lifted it and placed it gently upon her head. In that moment, Clementine was no longer the girl mocked for her simplicity or pitied for her hair. She was Queen Clementine, Luna of the realm, the chosen of the Alpha King. Lord Rufus wept openly, his proud sobs echoing softly. His daughter, his light, had risen higher than he had ever dreamed. Servants, guards, even nobles bowed deeply. Some cried, some smiled, and among the sea of faces stood Lady Margaret and her daughters, silent, trembling, undone. Effie's lips quivered as she leaned toward her mother. "Mother," she whispered shakily, her voice breaking. "She knows. Clementine knows about the cream." Lady Margaret's face drained of all color. Her breath hitched. Her fan fell from her trembling hand, clattering against the marble floor. "No," she hissed under her breath, her eyes darting to Clementine on the dais. "No, this cannot be." Lucy clutched her mother's arm, whispering fearfully, "What will she do to us, Mother? She's the queen now." Lady Margaret said nothing. Her mind raced. All her years of scheming, her cruelty, her lies, all of it had turned to dust in a single night. The power she had held over Clementine was gone, snatched away by fate and righteousness. As the crowd continued to cheer, chanting her name, Clementine reached for Valerian's hand. Together they raised their joined hands high, the symbol of unity between love and power, compassion and strength. The moonlight from the palace dome streamed down, illuminating them both. In that moment, the kingdom saw what true royalty meant, not crowns or jewels, but the grace of a woman whose heart remained pure even when the world sought to destroy it. And Lady Margaret, watching from below, realized too late that no poison, no plot, and no deceit could ever outshine a heart like Clementine's. The golden chandeliers gleamed overhead, but their light seemed colder, sharper, as though even they awaited what was to come. Clementine, her crown still newly set upon her head, rose from her throne with the quiet strength of one who did not seek revenge, but truth. Her voice, though gentle, carried through the hall like the wind before a storm. "Before we close this night of joy," she said, "I must speak of a great wrong that is long hidden in shadows." The nobles exchanged puzzled glances. Murmurs rippled across the room. Even Valerian turned to her with a look of curiosity and concern. But Clementine's gaze did not waver. She turned to the crowd and raised her hand. "I call upon Lady Marie the herbalist to step forward." From the edges of the hall, a humble woman emerged, clad in simple robes, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a small satchel. The crowd parted before her as she walked, her head bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty," she said softly, kneeling before Clementine. Clementine offered her a kind smile. "Rise, my lady. Tonight you shall not kneel before me. You shall stand before truth." Gasps echoed. Valerian's golden eyes narrowed in curiosity as the herbalist stood, her hands shaking as she reached into her satchel and drew out a small clay jar, the very same that once held Clementine's hair cream. "My queen," Marie began, her voice steadying as she spoke, "I have served the markets for 20 years as a herbalist and healer. Some weeks ago you brought me this jar asking that I examine it." She lifted the jar for all to see. I found moon maggots within, tiny venomous creatures that feed upon hair and flesh. It was no accident, it was deliberate poisoning. A collective gasp swept the room. Valerian stepped forward, his expression darkening. "You are certain?" Marie nodded firmly. "Beyond doubt, Your Majesty. And what's more, when I examined the second jar, the so-called remedy given to her by Lady Margaret, I found it infested as well. It was no cure. It was a death sentence for the Queen's beauty, meant to shame and destroy her." The hall erupted in whispers. Nobles turned to one another, eyes wide with outrage. All eyes now fell upon Lady Margaret, who stood pale and trembling near the edge of the gathering. Effie and Lucy clutched at her sleeves, their faces ghostly white. Valerian's voice thundered through the hall. "Lady Margaret of House Rufus, you must answer to the crown." Her knees nearly buckled as she stumbled to the center of the floor. Your Majesty, there must be a mistake," she stammered. "My daughter must have... Perhaps the maids." "Silence," Valerian's voice cut through her excuses like steel. "You dare poison the one I have chosen as queen? You dare defile the crown's honor with your envy?" Lady Margaret fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please, my king, I only sought to protect my daughter's future. Clementine. She has always stolen their place in the hearts of men. She had everything: beauty, grace, love. Clementine's voice interrupted her softly. "And so you hated me?" The room stilled again. Clementine stepped closer, her face calm, though her eyes glistened. "I loved you as a mother. I wanted nothing more than peace in our home. But your envy made me a stranger beneath my own roof. You sought to destroy me, yet it is your own heart that destroyed you." Lady Margaret bowed her head, weeping bitterly. Effie and Lucy clung to each other, shaking, no longer the proud and haughty girls who had strutted through the market. They looked small now, broken, stripped of their pride. Valerian straightened to his full height, his voice ringing out. "For your crimes against your queen and the royal bloodline, for envy and deceit that sought to defile the sacred bond of our kind, Lady Margaret and her daughters, Effie and Lucy, are hereby stripped of title, wealth, and privilege. You shall leave this kingdom before sunrise, never to return. Should you cross its borders again, you will answer to the law of the crown." The guard stepped forward. The gasps that followed were mixed: shock, pity, and grim satisfaction. Lady Margaret's pleas filled the hall. "Please, your majesty, mercy, we are your kin, your mate's blood." But Valerian's tone did not waver. Effie's sobs echoed. "Clementine, please, we didn't mean for it to go so far." Clementine looked at them with quiet sadness. "You did, but I forgive you in my heart." Her words silenced the room. Even Valerian looked upon her with awe, his queen who chose compassion over vengeance. As the guards led the weeping women away, Clementine stood tall, her head high. She felt no joy in their downfall, only the heavy ache of loss. Justice had been done, but it was not a victory to her. It was a reminder of how easily love could be poisoned by envy. The hall remained silent for a long moment after they were gone. Then Valerian stepped beside her and took her hand gently. "My queen," he whispered, "you have shown me that the truest power lies not in command, but in compassion." Clementine's gaze lifted toward the moonlit windows, her heart calm at last. "Justice is only pure when it is touched by mercy," she said softly. The crowd bowed as one, chanting her name once more, not from fear nor from duty, but from love. And as the night drew to a close, Queen Clementine stood upon her throne beside her king, her heart unburdened, her spirit radiant, her crown gleaming not with gold but with the quiet light of grace. Weeks passed since the night the truth had shattered the kingdom's silence. The palace, once burdened by deceit, now brimmed with laughter and song. The people spoke of their new queen with pride, not because she was fair, but because she was kind. On one quiet evening, as the sun melted into gold and the moon began its slow rise, Queen Clementine stood on the grand balcony of the palace. The soft wind brushed her face, carrying with it the scent of roses and the sound of distant drums from the village below. Her long gown shimmered like silver threads, woven from the moonlight itself. She reached up to tuck a loose curl behind her ear and paused, her fingers trembling slightly. Her hair, once bald, now flowed softly over her shoulders. The strands, thick and full again, glowed beneath the night's gentle light. It was a silent reminder that renewal always follows pain, and that beauty born from suffering shines brighter than before. King Valerian stepped quietly behind her, his presence steady and warm. Without his golden mask, without his crown, he seemed simply a man. "You're quiet tonight, my queen," he said, his voice low, carrying the gentleness she loved. Clementine smiled faintly, gazing at the horizon. "I was just thinking," she said, "how strange life is. Once I was nothing more than a stepdaughter hidden behind shadows and scorn. Now, I stand here, as queen." Valerian stepped closer, placing his hand over hers on the balcony rail. "You were never hidden, my love," he murmured. "You were being prepared for this very moment." She turned to face him, her eyes glistening with emotion. "And you were the first to look beyond what others saw." He smiled. "It was your heart that found me first, Clem. Not your beauty, not your grace, but that kindness that refused to fade even when the world turned cruel. That is the heart my people love. That is the heart I fell in love with." Clementine felt her chest tighten with emotion. "My heart brought me pain," she whispered softly. "It made me forgive when I could have hated. It made me hope when I should have given up." Valerian tilted her chin gently until her eyes met his. "Yes," he said. "Your kind heart made you suffer. It made you cry. It made you break. But it also made you shine. Your heart may have been wounded, my love, but in the end, it had the last laugh." Tears gathered in her eyes, but this time they were not from pain. They were tears of peace, of healing. She smiled through them, and Valerian brushed one away with his thumb. "Then let us laugh together," she said softly. Valerian smiled, his hand resting gently at her waist as he leaned closer. The moonlight bathed them in silver glow as their lips met, a kiss not born from desire alone but from trust, from forgiveness, from two souls who had walked through fire and come out stronger. As the wind carried their laughter across the night, the bells of the kingdom rang, not for war, not for sorrow, but for peace. If you enjoyed Clementine and Valerian's journey, tell me where you are watching from, your heart-stopping moment and your favorite character. We love to read your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any love story we create under the moonlight. Until the next story, keep howling at the moon.